beginnings of London were thought to be around 1600 to 1000 BC. There was some settlements here of Briton tribes, maybe of Celtic peoples or Druids. But on this spot right here, about 46 AD, after the 43 AD conquering of England by Julius Caesar, London was established by the Roman Empire, way over here in Britannia, on the River Thames. By 50 AD, it was a trading port on the Thames River. But this came with a lot of rebellion and angst. Of course, there were some Britons that, gave in to the Romans despite all their cruelty and money taxes and stuff like that. And one event happened though, not far from here, I believe up in Norwich area. Boudicca was a powerful queen of a Briton tribe. See, Britain was a bunch of different tribes and organizations of people, and just like Rome always did, tried to use them against each other. But Boudicca's tribe wasn't faltering. So the Roman legions would come in and mess with her people all the time. And one time they crossed the line. They came in and raped her daughters, the princesses of Boudicca's kingdom, I guess, tribe. And it actually was gang raped by the Roman legions, which is pissed off a lot of people. Boudicca, along with all the angry people of her realm, rebelled against the Romans' occupation. They actually had a lot of victories. Norwich, Norfolk area, and including here. They came in to Londinium, and the city was burned to the ground, and many people were slaughtered. Romans and Britons alike that sided with them. About 61 AD. The rebellion, though, was put down quickly after that, and about 100 AD, Londinium returned as a thriving Roman town. And that's when these walls and forts were built right here, right on this spot, to defend the city against another attack like that happened before. In case that happened, some crazy birds up there watching. So, from 61 AD, Queen Boudicca's rebellion and loss eventually, where the Britons took over people, to about 100 AD, transformed this area with mostly tiled roofs and wooden houses. But by the end of the 2nd century, I always hate when I say that, by the end of the 100s, this whole wall was built. All right, let's go for a walk along the wall. So about 100 to 200 AD, a whole entire wall and fort, a lot by the 9th legions of Rome, was built along this section of the city. It surrounded the entire area. Even see a map right here where it went around. This was the original Roman settlement on the River Thames. That was it. But it was an important city. The wall was 20 feet high. A little higher than this. Probably went down a little lower. Watch out, little mud. In the middle of the 200s, bastions were added to it. And the population of Roman London, Londinium, oh, hello dog, rose really high actually to about 45,000 people. It was the largest town in Roman Britannia, giving way to the London capital city we see today. Let's check out some more ruins here. This classic spot That's really quiet. Not a lot of people know about it, actually. Except for this dog. Hey, buddy. So Roman London, Londinium, had an amphitheater which could hold 8,000 people. Right around here somewhere, where these massive buildings are now. Gladiators fought to the death. Cockfighting was also a popular sport. So a lot of these walls are original from the Roman times. Roman Londinium at its height, lasted about a couple hundred years. About 60 AD to 200, 300 AD was the height. There was a lot of strife in the empire. This is a very far western region where we were before. Romania, Dacians were giving the Romans a lot of problems. At the same time, this area was beginning to be developed. Thracians down in Bulgaria, Dacians were in Romania, Judea, Jewish. There was a huge rebellion in modern day Israel. We're talking about the time it was Christmas, right? Birth of Jesus celebration. We're talking about around the time just after Jesus lived and died. This Roman Empire was coming to this area, fought off Boudicca, then took these walls. Londinium, the Roman Empire city, turned into a powerhouse of the province of Britannia. But as Roman Empire faltered in the 300s, Christianity was accepted and the split between East and West Rome started happening. Germanic tribes started invading all over the place, including here, Saxon tribes. Rome was forced to abandon Londinium, and the last Roman soldier left Britain in 407 AD, and largely the city, these walls, extended to the river. And over here, which is an amazing modern metropolis today, was largely abandoned, they think, with just small pockets of fishermen and people that stayed behind after the Romans left. Amazing. Londinium. So the last Roman soldier left Britain in 407 AD. Afterwards, London was completely abandoned. Most likely. There may have been a few people living here, farming and fishing, but it declined heavily from its Roman height a long time before that. Not a lot is known about this time, but the area was Christianized, and around 597, the Roman Catholic Church began sending monks here to, Christianize the people, the London area. In 604 AD, a bishop was appointed for London. By the 640s, there was a mint in London making coins, and 670s, a royal document called London, the palace where the ships land, near the river Thames, why the city exists. In the early 700s, a writer described London as a trading center for many nations who visit by sea. This was a time of Saxon London coming up next, which is, Saxons are Germanic people who worked their way over this way. Conquering and defeating the lands of different Roman evacuated territories. So the Saxons are southeast German people that ended up in this region. London, though, was nothing as it is today. It was just a city of thatched roofs and small things. We're getting close to when this was built. So in 842, the Vikings, like my college, Portland State Vikings, they're actually from Denmark, came in here and they looted and destroyed London. Oh, didn't destroy. Bad times, Norway, Danish, a lot of Vikings were running around all over Europe and different parts of the world, including here. In 851, they burned most of the city down. But then the Vikings gave up and turned to conquest. Instead of just raiding, they conquered most of northern and eastern England, including London. King Alfred the Great, though, Anglo-Saxon, totally defeated the Vikings, though, in 878, and split the country between them. The Vikings took the eastern England, including London, while Alfred took the south and the west. But in 886 AD, Alfred retook the city from the Vikings from Denmark. They moved inside the city walls for protection. Soon, many foreign merchants came to live here. The beginning of a globalized city, well, really was Roman times, but this was the start of the modern globalized London as we have it today. People from Germany, France, different areas of Europe, different Ireland, Scotland, all over began moving here because of the heavy trade area of the Thames River right here. The Vikings returned again, though, in 994 AD. But this time the Londoners fought them off. And they had to retreat. England was, or this part of England, was never attacked by Vikings again. For the most part. For a while, at least. So, London Bridge, which is right over there, the new London Bridge. The London Bridge is falling down, that we learned in America as kids. Comes from the 1000s when, I just said the Vikings never came back. They did, but this time they were from Norway. King Olaf attacked England. He was unable to get past the river here on Viking ships. So they had to tear the bridge down. That's where London Bridge falling down comes from. There's the modern one down there in the distance. It was during this time, though, after Olaf was defeated, but there was some intermingling between all these people, of course. A lot of English people today have a little bit of Scandinavian in their DNA because of these times. Going into the 1000s, Edward the Confessor built a wooden palace down this way where Westminster Palace is now. And then came big changes in London and in England. The Battle of Hastings, 1066, where a group of descendants from French and Vikings called Normans who lived in a certain area of northwest France came over here and invaded the Saxons. The Normans approached London Bridge from the south, but were fought off by the Londoners from this way, right around this area. William the Conqueror, though, famous, occupied and ended up winning, taking the Palace of Westminster down there. And on December 25th, Christmas Day, coming up soon, 1066, it was the beginning of the royal family of London in England. I was the first king. The royals to this day are related to this guy. Pretty crazy, right? So, London was made a charter, one of the biggest cities in the territory. He built a wooden tower to stand guard over London. It was replaced by another tower about 1100 AD, and this was the beginnings here of the Tower of London. About 1100 AD, maybe 1078. This was a fortification built right in this spot by the conquering and new Normans, the English, Anglo-Saxons. So medieval London was a lively place. There was a horse market around here, and public executions happened in the square nearby, which were very popular. And a lot of people danced and had open spaces. Archery and wrestling took place near here. They even went ice skating on the river. Pretty crazy in these early days. So 1100 to 1200, London was often spelled London. This was the beginnings of the English language, which dominates the world today, the language I speak. Around the 1300s, though, is when the city, spelled as it is today, London, first started. Let's move down by the water. So in the 1200s, more religious stuff, friars came to London. And instead of living a monk's life in silence, they began preaching. Many people started becoming very religious. In 1381, there was a peasants' revolt against the king that was oppressing them. And the rebels ended up taking Westminster. The rebels, while the king was in mass church at Westminster, the rebels broke in here to the Tower of London and killed the Archbishop of Canterbury and several royal officials. They were taking refuge here during the riots. See, stuff like that's been happening all the time, right? They confronted the king on his way back from mass, and the mayor of London stabbed the leader of the rebels, fearing he was going to attack the king. Afterward, the king managed to calm the rebels and persuaded them to go home. A rebellion was put down, had involvement right on this spot. By this time, London population reached about 50,000 people, getting to be a much larger city. You know, not large for us now, but think about it, that's pretty big. But around this time, when more populations were converging together, the Black Death came into London, killing many people by disease.
Photo I sent you.
1340s, 1349, London soon recovered, and its population was about 70,000. In the Middle Ages, the church owned about a quarter of the land until Henry VIII dissolved all the Catholic monasteries and released a lot of the church land for new building and private ownership, which I just saw a crazy fish out there. That was nice, really huge and went underwater. Henry VIII, the last person we'll talk about in this spot, infamously had 6 wives. He always found a problem with many of them. 2 of them he had arrested and beheaded inside this tower. Crazy. Around this time, a lot of changes were happening in England. Some other children who were royals to the throne, not in Henry VIII's time, I think a little bit before, 1400s, they were arrested by their jealous uncle who wanted to usurp the throne. 2 boys, and they were put in the tower here, never to be seen from again. Well, that gets about to the Henry VIII time. That was the start of the Church of England, which is like a combination of Protestant and Catholic, I believe. They broke away from the Pope because the Pope in Rome said to the king, "You're getting divorced too much, you're acting crazy with all your wives, what are you doing?" And yeah, Tower of London, good spot. Alright, so we left off with Henry VIII times over at the Royal Tower. So let's get into more modern London history, this classic spot. So in the 1600s, lots of buildings were being built. Hyde Park was open, for example. King Charles I created Richmond Park for hunting. Queen's House was completed over there. Greenwich. There was a lot of growth and prosperity of London in the 1600s. Here at the spot, Westminster Palace and Abbey, where the kings and queens of England have been coronated since 1066. Pretty crazy. So let's fast forward back to the 1600s. Although several times, 1603, 1633, and 1665, there were plagues of Black Death in the crowded city. Probably brought on bugs that were on rats, which they couldn't figure out. What's the classic song? Ring around the posy, the pocket full of posy. That comes from, it was a children's song to sing during the Black Death when thousands of people are dying in the city. Is crazy. But the city always quickly rebounded. 1642, though, there was a civil war between the Parliament, which is right here, and the king, which the king ended up winning because he controlled more of the army. And tragedy struck. 1666 was the Great Fire of London. Started in a baker's bakery, and it burned much of the city, about 60%, all of the wooden buildings and structures. Obviously not this in this area. 1666 was a very bad time for the city of London. About 70 to 80,000 people were made homeless, and miraculously though, only 16 people died in the fire. But after that, the royalty and king ordered that all buildings in the city forever are built in stone, not wood, which is, much of those buildings built during this time survive to this day, 16 and 1700s. And also in the 16 to 1700s is when Great Britain began circumnavigating the globe and getting all kinds of money in the colonial era, including people coming to North America, Caribbean, Asia, India, Africa. The empire was expanding around the world. Famously, the Revolutionary War happened, 1780s. Georgetown, Malaysia was founded. British India started becoming big. South Africa, Britain, Iran. Well, let's go back to their home base in London here. So, city of London began greatly expanding in 1700s. There was a rapid time of rapid growth in the early settings for the Industrial Revolution. English Parliament had several buildings built by amazing architects all around, like Christopher Wren, all around the city, like St. Paul's Cathedral and several other buildings. Probably a lot of work was done on this one. Also, this era was called the Georgian period of London, and the town began spreading beyond its traditional limits for the first time, coming up into the times that we have today. Buckingham Palace, which is in the second part of this video, was built around 1600 and enlarged a little bit later. Alright, let's wrap up London history. This palace, Buckingham Palace, home of the royals, the king, queen, princesses, duchess, all that kind of stuff. It was first built in the 1600s, but let's fast forward, 1837, it was enlarged to the state it is today. A phenomenon of the era was coffee houses became popular in London, given tea was very popular, coffee was very big. Also, in the 1700s, there was a big gin problem in London. A lot of people made their own homemade gin, and people getting a little addicted to it. Other events, though, in the 1700s, as Britain expanded their empire, there was some riots, Protestants versus Catholics. 1787, actually, Britain freed slaves from London, America, and many of Britain's colonies, founded Freetown in Sierra Leone. That's interesting. 1750, London Bridge was the only bridge crossing the Thames. Now there's many, over 10. And this all led into the 1800s and modern times when this was built. 1837. 1845, the map of London was heavily expanded upon, and it became a city of 6.7 million by 1900. And it's the largest city and capital of the British Empire. The sun never sets on the British Empire. So why it says that is the British Empire extended all around the world. Australia, India, Egypt, Britain, Jamaica, Belize, every different islands in the middle of the Pacific, every point on the globe that was sunny was Britain at one point. Although the 1800s grew fabulously in wealth, there was a lot of poverty in the city, and this is the time when Charles Dickens wrote Oliver Twist, which takes place in London. Interesting. But, you know, inequality that tends to happen in empire and urban cities, and probably still inequality in London to this day. So this first rail line was built in London in 1836, which is amazing, pretty early for railroads. And by 1863, the underground started. Wow, the first in the world, underground. Groundbreaking. The urbanized area grew very huge in the late 1800s, and the Houses of Parliament from Westminster Bridge were built in 1890s, which is right over there a little ways, which is being worked on. In 1888, it was a county of London, the metropolitan area was expanded, now home to millions of people, 9 million in the city, probably over 20 million. Metro-wide. People down here checking out the palace from all over the world. We're in France. Sounded like. Alright, so World War I. Tough time for England. They were on the Allied side. Lost many young men. There were the first bombing raids ever by German Zeppelin airships. Zeppelins killed about 700 people in London, which must have been a new tear to be bombed from the sky. Zeppelins in the 19-teens, that's crazy. But with the addition of America and some different circumstances happening, French battling hard, the decline of the Austria-Hungary and Ottoman empires, Germany's main allies, in their defeats, especially the Russian Revolution happening also, Britain and the Allied side won World War I. The period between wars, you know, royal little recession, severe unemployment during the Great Depression, just like America. A lot of stuff happened then. 1930s, many Jewish people came in here to London from Nazi Germany, moved here. World War II breaks out, and the Blitz started, which was heavy bombing by Nazi Germany. A good chunk of the city was severely damaged, many citizens killed. The heaviest bombing started in 1940 and 41. Wow, that's pretty crazy. St. Paul's Cathedral, famously, with bombs falling all around it, was unscathed. It's a famous picture where you can see St. Paul's Cathedral and a bunch of fire and smoke. A miracle, they say. But by 1944, with the World War II tide turning, Hitler focused on the Eastern Front more than Britain, especially after the loss of D-Day in France. Even though there was a few more bombings of London, including the first ever rockets, the V1 and V2 rockets. Imagine seeing those flying through the sky. That would be crazy. But by war's end, 30,000 up to 50,000 Londoners were killed by those bombs, which is a lot. So after the war, it was a rough time, rebuilding era, and coming out of that by the 60s was the pop culture revolution with rock and roll groups coming out of here like Rolling Stones and the Beatles and several others, and hippie culture and bell bottoms. Man, it must have been a crazy time. Like Austin Powers shagging, baby, yeah. So the mid-1960s was a big culture powerhouse of London. Coming up in today, 1980s, 1990s, is when London really became a globalized center of the world. It has ranks with New York City, Tokyo, Paris, now Shanghai, probably Dubai, maybe, and other ones like that. But the history of London, if I didn't do it justice, I know I left out a lot of events, things that happened in. This is an intense place with a ton of history. This is the palace of the Queen of England. Long live the Queen. Awesome place. What a time. What a history.